The Pacific was never still, but on December 18, 1944, it became something else entirely, a graveyard. Admiral William Bull Halsey commanded Task Force 38, one of the most powerful naval forces the world had ever seen. Hundreds of ships spread across the Philippine Sea, fresh from supporting General MacArthur's push to retake the Philippines. Carriers bristling with planes, battleships armed with heavy guns, cruisers, destroyers, all of them riding high on American industrial might. But that morning, the enemy wasn't the Japanese Imperial Navy. It was nature itself. A Pacific typhoon roared into the fleet's path, winds screaming at over 100 knots, waves building past 70 feet, and barometers dropping faster than anyone had seen before. 3 destroyers, the USS Spence, the USS Hull, and the USS Monaghan, would never make it out. They capsized, vanishing under the water with nearly every man aboard. Carriers themselves leaned so hard in the wind that planes chained to the flight deck broke free and hurled into the ocean. Steel groaned, radar masts snapped, and sailors clung to ladders with white knuckles as the horizon tilted like a death sentence. Historians would later call it Typhoon Cobra. The Navy called it one of its darkest days at sea. Yet, even through devastation, the larger carriers survived. Not because they were invincible, but because their crews understood that in the fight between steel and storm, survival depended on skill, discipline, and sheer willpower. That same truth holds today. Even with nuclear engines, advanced radar, and the strongest steel humanity can build, aircraft carriers still face seas that can kill. And when those waves rise, it's not technology alone that keeps them alive. It's the men and women aboard, their split-second choices, their relentless training, and their refusal to surrender. This is the story of how U.S. Navy carrier crews endure the monster waves of the open sea. Section 1. Why slowing down is never an option. Most people assume that when seas rise and storms grow dangerous, the logical choice is simple: slow down, wait it out, or change course. But for aircraft carriers, that's not always an option. Carriers are not luxury liners or cargo ships. They are mobile airfields, floating cities designed to project power across the world. Every mission is governed by one word: speed. During combat operations, carriers must maintain a constant wind speed across the flight deck to launch and recover aircraft. This means sailing at 25 to 30 knots, often straight into the wind, whether the ocean is calm or violent. A single hesitation could mean planes cannot land safely, or worse, that an entire mission fails. In Operation Desert Storm, the USS Nimitz pushed through 25-foot seas while maintaining 30 knots, launching strike after strike into Iraq. Captain Mike Abrash Off, who later commanded a destroyer, explained bluntly, "The enemy doesn't care if there's a storm. You don't get to wait for perfect weather in combat." At those speeds, water becomes a weapon. Hitting a 50-foot wave at 30 knots carries the same energy as a high-speed car crash. But instead of a car, it's a 100,000-ton city of steel, loaded with nuclear reactors, bombs, and jets. Sailors know this well. Slowing down might feel safe in theory, but at sea, stopping is often more dangerous than moving forward. A carrier without speed loses steerage, becomes vulnerable to broadsides, and risks rolling fatally in waves. The paradox is brutal. Sometimes the only way to survive a storm is to charge straight into it. Section 2. The bridge, split-second navigation. If speed is survival, the bridge is where that survival is decided. On an aircraft carrier, the bridge team works around the clock. The officer of the deck, OOD, commands navigation, supported by quartermasters, helmsmen, lookouts, and radar operators. In storms, their role becomes less about routine navigation and more about high-stakes calculation. Quartermasters call out wave height and timing every 30 seconds. The helmsman grips the wheel as the ship bucks like a wild animal. The OOD adjusts heading and speed constantly, trying to time the rhythm of waves. One wrong call, and the carrier could bury its bow underwater, or worse, roll violently broadside. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, who served on the USS George Washington during a 2019 North Atlantic storm, described it like this: "Every impact felt like hitting a concrete wall. You speed up into small waves, then pull power just before the big ones hit. It's like surfing with 5,000 lives, depending on your timing. This technique is known as wave riding. It requires reading the ocean like a language, identifying patterns, predicting crests, and steering so the ship cuts through instead of being thrown sideways. Radar helps, but veteran officers often say it's their gut, years of experience watching the sea, that guides them when technology falters. In storms like Typhoon Cobra, crews often reported that the horizon disappeared entirely, swallowed by walls of green water. Imagine standing on the bridge of a skyscraper-sized vessel as the ocean itself climbs higher than the deck windows. For officers, there's no room for fear, only calculation, discipline, and the knowledge that every order affects thousands of lives. Section 3. The flight deck, a runway on a roller coaster. If the bridge is about steering through waves, the flight deck is about defying them. The flight deck of a carrier is one of the most dangerous workplaces on Earth, even in calm seas. Add a storm, and it becomes chaos. Chains rattle as crews double secure fighter jets with up to 30 tie-downs each. Helicopters are rolled into hangars before wind can flip them like toys. Every tool, every hose, every container is lashed down. A single loose wrench in storm winds could kill. But the real nightmare is flight operations. Carriers are designed to keep planes flying no matter the weather, and sometimes missions demand that launches and landings continue in seas most people would call impossible. Landing a jet on a carrier is already like threading a needle at 150 miles per hour. In storms, the challenge multiplies. The deck doesn't just tilt. It rises and falls 20, sometimes 30 feet in seconds. To the pilot, the runway looks like it's trying to escape from under them. Landing signal officers, LSOs, stand just feet from the landing area using hand signals, lights, and radios to guide jets in. Petty Officer First Class Thompson, who served aboard the USS Ronald Reagan, explained, "We're not judging where the deck is, we're predicting where it will be when the jet lands. At storm speeds, your margin of error is zero. Get it wrong, and the plane slams too hard or misses the cables completely." During one storm, LSOs recalled a moment when the deck rose unexpectedly just as an FA-18 touched down. The combined force nearly ripped the arresting cable free. The pilot walked away shaken, the crew drenched in seawater spray, but the carrier stayed operational. Storm or no storm, the flight deck doesn't close. For the sailors who work it, there's no choice but to stare down walls of water and keep the runway alive. If you're proud of the men and women who guide jets onto a moving deck in the middle of raging seas, type "proud" in the comments below. Their skill keeps the Navy's heart beating, even when the ocean tries to shut it down. Section 4. Engine Room Warriors, Power Against the Sea. While the flight deck crew battles wind and water above, another fight happens deep inside the hull, where the storm is invisible but no less dangerous. In the engine rooms and reactor compartments, sailors feel the ship twist and vibrate with every wave. Steel bulkheads groan like a giant breathing under pressure. Nuclear operators monitor gauges with laser focus, adjusting control rods and coolant flow so the reactors never falter. Chief Petty Officer Williams put it best. When the bow slams into a 60-foot wave, it feels like the entire ship flexes. But we can't blink. If the reactors drop, the ship dies. That power keeps everything alive: radar, catapults, desalination plants, and the ship's ability to steer into waves instead of becoming their victim. Even in chaos, the motto never changes: power must flow. Section 5. Damage Control, Fighting the Sea Itself. No storm leaves steel untouched. Waves bend fittings, buckle plates, and send seawater crashing into compartments below deck. In 2003, a rogue wave slammed the USS Carl Vinson, flooding multiple areas. Damage control teams rushed in, welding reinforcement beams, bracing bulkheads, and pumping seawater as the ship charged forward at nearly 30 knots. Hull technician Chief Morrison remembered, "It was like performing surgery during an earthquake. Sparks flying, water rising, and the ship still moving under our feet." Every sailor trains in damage control. In a storm, anyone, aviator, cook, clerk, can be called to grab a fire hose or brace a flooding wall. This shared responsibility is why carriers survive when the ocean tries to tear them apart. Section 6. The human spirit at sea. What truly keeps carriers alive through storms isn't just steel or reactors, it's people. Sailors wedge themselves into bunks so they don't roll out. Cooks tie down trays and keep serving hot meals because morale is as vital as machinery. On the bridge and in the engine rooms, sailors fight fatigue with humor, telling jokes while water crashes outside. Storms forge bonds that last a lifetime. As one veteran said, "When you've stood shoulder to shoulder with someone in 60-foot seas, you never forget them. That's family for life." This is the hidden story of America's carriers. Not just weapons of war, but communities of men and women proving that even when nature shows its worst, human courage rises to meet it. Section 7. Future technology, safer storms, ahead. The Navy isn't stopping at tradition. Engineers are developing new technologies to make storm survival safer. Stabilization systems that reduce ship motion by up to 50%. Advanced weather routing software that predicts wave windows with mathematical precision. Rogue wave prediction algorithms pioneered at MIT, capable of warning carriers minutes before deadly swells strike. Virtual reality simulators that recreate historic storms, allowing today's crews to train in yesterday's disasters without risk. Even so, no technology replaces human skill. Every sailor knows, when the sea rises, it's the crew's courage that decides survival. Conclusion. From Typhoon Cobra in 1944 to rogue waves in the 21st century, the U.S. Navy has faced storms that could have ended fleets. Yet no American aircraft carrier has ever been lost to heavy weather. That record is not luck. It is the result of discipline, training, teamwork, and the relentless will of sailors who refuse to yield. The next time you see a carrier silhouetted on the horizon, remember what it represents. Pilots landing on a deck that rises and falls like an earthquake. Reactor crews holding power steady as steel groans around them. Damage control teams welding and flooding compartments while the storm rages on. And ordinary sailors, cooks, clerks, engineers, finding ways to keep morale alive when nature tries to break them. These floating cities are more than war machines. They are monuments to human resilience. If this story gave you a new respect for the heroes who face down the ocean itself, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of naval courage, and remember this: America's true strength lies not just in its steel, but in the sailors who master the sea, even when the sea is at its worst.